Welcome back to another episode of CCW Insider, where you hear about the matches and stories of wrestling's last territory, Coastal Championship Wrestling. I'm Ryan Joy, and I run MinutesToBellTime.com, a website and database tracking pro wrestling from around the world. Before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to mention that despite saying that we'll have Ariel Levy on the show for the past couple of weeks, he seems to have taken a major turn, dropping the tag titles, turning on his partner Venetius, and then attacking him. So we'll keep following the story in the coming weeks and see if we can get Ariel to break his silence and come on the show. But as for this episode number 7, I'll be talking with Anna Diaz. She is both a wrestler and the co-host of Fang and Banging with Gangrel. So she's a fairly busy lady. Diaz talks about her athletic background that kicked off when she was very young, and she also talks about her battles with epilepsy. Anna will be facing Valentina Rossi this Saturday in Pompano Beach, Florida for CCW Breakout 12. Tickets are available at CoastalChampionshipWrestlingFL.com. This is a great interview with Anna Diaz, and it's coming up right now. I'm talking with CCW wrestler and co-host of Fangin and Banging with Gangrel. She is facing Valentina Rossi at this weekend's CCW Breakout 12. I'm talking with Anna Diaz. Anna, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I've heard so much and seen promoting the CCW podcast and stuff, and I'm just I'm a part of it right now.
You are. you are a big part of it right now. So there's so much to talk about. I want to talk about Valentina Rossi. I want to talk about your journey to become a wrestler. But before we get into all of that, I know you grew up a wrestling fan, but I want to talk about your other athletic pursuits. So talk about being a competitive athlete from a young age, and what you were into and how that went.
Yeah, so I actually started gymnastics at the age of 3.
Wow.
And obviously I did not do a competitive then, but I kept with, and I got to the level where you can do it competitively, and I did that for a little bit. While I was doing that, I was also doing karate. So I did karate for a little bit, not too long. And then I had to quit karate to pursue gymnastics at a competitive level. I did that pretty much my entire life, my whole childhood I did that. And after that, with schedules being a little funky, and the class that I was going to didn't work out with school at the time. So I was starting middle school, and I saw, they have a cheerleading program. And I'm like, I am really not the girl to ever do cheerleading. But I figured, hey, they tumble, which is what I like to do. So I started doing that for 2 years, and I mean, here I am, a professional wrestler.
So how old were you when you were doing the competitive gymnast stuff? Because it sounds like you were still pretty young.
Yeah, I'd say from the age of 12 to 15, maybe, or
Okay.
Yeah, 12 to 15 sounds about right.
And what did that look like? Was there a lot of travel, or was it
There
mainly?
were a couple travels. Most were local. I don't remember all of it, but I remember once for a bigger competition. We did travel to Texas, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But for gymnastics, I think everything was pretty much local, but that was the one that we did travel for.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then so it's funny, you were like, oh, I did gymnastics, and I did cheer, and then and then I'm a wrestler. So how do you think those athletic skills and pursuits prepared you for wrestling?
Oh, they definitely helped. I cannot tell you how much they helped. Well, I left one out. I did MMA for a couple months before wrestling, just because I couldn't find a school close enough. But The one sport that helped the most with wrestling is definitely gymnastics. Because like our warm-ups in wrestling are rolls and all that stuff, and like I picked those up like that because I was already so used to rolling and kind of flipping and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I would think that wrestling would be really good. Gymnastics, I would think you'd be really flexible, and I would think that would be really useful in wrestling.
Yeah, no, not as flexible as I used to be, but wrestling has kind of stiffened me up a little bit. But
I
that
bet.
definitely helped as well. Yeah.
So I know you were also a fan of wrestling growing up. So while you were doing all these other things, what are some of your earliest memories of wrestling? Who are some of your favorites?
I was always a fan of Mickie James. That's
Nice.
like whenever somebody asks my favorite wrestler, like I don't know if I'd put her as my favorite, but she's definitely up there. Because before I started watching like WWE, what I would watch is TNA, which is Impact now, but it
Hmm.
was TNA at the time, and like I would watch a lot of Mickie James, AJ Styles, um, yeah, Gail Kim as well.
Hmm.
Like I always enjoyed the knockout matches,
Sure.
and like I remember that because my dad and brother watched it, which is the main reason I watched it. If there
Hmm.
was a pay-per-view that day, I would literally spend the entire day just watching, like on the channel that it's gonna be on, watching like the previews and
Nice.
like this like telling the story of like their feud and stuff. I would just watch it on a replay and replay like the entire
Nice.
day until it came on.
I love that. Mickey James is such a great figure in wrestling, especially when you consider she's having such a renaissance right now in the sense that
Yeah.
she was she had signed with WWE. She came back to WWE and they kind of put her on the shelf for a long, long time. And when
Hmm.
she got released, man, she just hit the ground running, and she was everywhere, and she has been everywhere. So
Yeah.
uh, it's really interesting, and I wonder if you have any thoughts about like what do you think the story behind her longevity is, because she has had a long career.
She just keeps going. Like
Yeah.
I don't know her age and like but yeah, no, she just keeps going and like it's kind of stupid in my opinion that WWE didn't really use her like as well as they really really could have.
Sure.
But I don't know, she still wrestles. She's in a bigger promotion as well and plus she's like a country singer too and does all of her concerts and all that. So it's like it's like Dave. I don't know how he keeps going with like all these things, keeps on doing shows, but I have no idea how they do it. I guess they're just trained to keep going and keep going.
Yeah. Well, figure it out now so that 25 years from now,
Right?
whatever, you can be in the same position. So talk about the becoming a wrestler. So when did you first know that that's what you wanted to do that?
So I was basically just in my room watching TNA over and over and over again, like anything I could find on YouTube. Um, and then I started researching wrestling schools. And then one day, like super scared, I went to my mom and then I was like kind of crying because like I was always scared to tell her anything because I was pretty like I was a pretty shy kid. Um, but I went to her and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I want to do something." And she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I'm just like, "I want to start wrestling." And her like being the amazing mother she is, like she was like, "Okay, let's find a school." Like she had no
That's
problem
awesome.
with it. And then I started at the Main Event Training Center. And mind you, I lived in Miami at the time. So it was not a close drive because they were in Fort Lauderdale. But every night practice, Monday through Thursdays, she would after work she would drive me all the way there, stay for practices. Um,
How old were you
and
at this time?
at this time, I just turned 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
So young.
So yeah, so I'm grateful that they even like accepted me to start wrestling because
Yeah.
some schools like you have to be a certain age.
Hmm.
But yeah, I started there, and once a Gangrel would come and help out,
Hmm.
but he opened it once he opened his own school. I was like, I'm gonna go with this guy, like,
Sure.
because he was the one that would help out the most. And yeah, just I trained with him for. I've been training with him for over 6 years, and if it wasn't for his training, I wouldn't be the wrestler that I am today. Like, it's crazy stuff. Like,
Yeah. It's funny when you mentioned like Fort Lauderdale, it's not close. It's when I think people have a huge misconception about Florida, right? Because Miami and Fort Lauderdale are what 20 miles apart, but like during traffic time, that's
yeah.
hours and
Oh
hours.
my, yes, you have no idea.
So you anticipated one of my questions. I was going to ask, how is it working with Gangrel, and what did your parents think when you brought that to them? So you knocked those questions out. But
Well, I have a story about that though, because I was still at the main event training center,
Mhm.
and Gangrel was just kind of sitting there watching class, and my mom goes to my dad, and she says, "Who is that guy?" Because like by his presence, he's somebody. Like
Right.
just by the tattoos, his build, like just just his presence. And he's like, "That's Gangrel." Like, and if hit her, she's like, "Oh." But no, training with him, I I hated seeing his pickup truck every time that I went to practice. Like I was hoping that I did not see it because the training just like it goes to
Oh,
another level. But which at the end of the day is what saved me and what made me who I am. Like many days just like running to the bathroom and crying and then coming out like trying to act all okay, but it's made me stronger in the long run.
it's a funny idiosyncrasy there, because what you said before was you were going to stick with Gangrel because he had helped you so much, but at the same time you also are approaching training. And you're like, oh no, he's here. So it's like you
Yeah,
had the
no, I would.
foresight to know that the pain was worth it. It was paying off.
Yeah, no, everything like because all of his training is just it's just so intense the way he nitpicks on every little thing to get it right. He's very focused on footwork and stamina. So we would do like a bunch of blow up drills and squats before we even like got in the ring. So yeah,
Right.
I mean, it was painful, but it was definitely worth it. I'm like, okay, this guy's teaching me stuff. I'm gonna stick with him.
I always hear people say, if you watch documentaries or whatever, they talk about they do squats after squat after squat. What is it about squats you think that's like the preparation? Like, why
that's,
is
a,
that the
that's a good
exercise?
question. Ah, I don't know. I think it's just to get. So one theory behind it that Dave uses sometimes, that Gangrel uses sometimes, is that like just to get you tired before you get in the ring. Because what happens with a lot of the students that I see coming in new is that if they're not tired yet, they still have time to think before they
Ah,
do anything. And so, like, yeah, you want to know what you're doing, but at the same time, if you overthink it, it's gonna come out. You're gonna get in your head, come out wrong. So I think the squats. I don't know why that exercise specifically, just because they suck, maybe.
yeah. At
But
least it's not a
but
burpee.
yeah, oh, I hate those too. But but squats, push-ups, jumping jacks, I think all of that is just one to warm up and two to get them tired so they can't think as much. So
Interesting.
they just act.
Yeah. All right, we're about halfway through the interview with Anna Diaz, and there are a few major takeaways. She started training at the age of 15, at the young age of 15. Holy smokes, that is young. I also love that when I asked Anna about her favorite wrestlers, she said Mickie James. She didn't say The Rock. She didn't say John Cena. She said Mickie might not have been her favorite, but you'll notice Mickie is the only name that she mentioned in the conversation. And that says something about Mickie James and potentially about the type of wrestler that Anna Diaz may want to be. Okay, I also mentioned in the intro that Anna spoke candidly about her experiences with epilepsy. That part of the interview is coming up right after we talk about Alive Wrestling.
Attention wrestling fans, the place to be each and every Tuesday is on the Coastal Championship Wrestling YouTube channel, where a new episode of CCW Alive Wrestling drops at 7 p.m. Witness the hard-hitting, high-flying action that is synonymous with the longest-running independent wrestling promotion in the southeastern United States. Subscribe today and don't you dare miss it.
So anyone that follows your career or your social media or Gangrel's social media for that matter knows that you're constantly raising funds for epilepsy, and it's something that you have firsthand experience with. And I wondered if you would share your story regarding epilepsy.
Of course, yeah. If you were to ask me that a couple years ago, I definitely would not.
Oh, I'm glad it's now.
Right. No. So I was diagnosed with epilepsy and anxiety at the age of 6. It's mainly epilepsy. My mom's not even really sure why they diagnosed anxiety. I guess it was at the time maybe, but I was diagnosed at 6 when I had an episode. But I believe it's just because I've had it since birth and they discovered it, which is a lot of the cases. I had in 2012, I had a total of 3 brain surgeries, which
Wow.
it was just supposed to be a 2-step procedure, but I believe they nicked something and I bled a little more than they were anticipating, and they went in for another one. But after that, I was seizure free for a whole year, which was nice, but after that year, they came back. Um, they came back, and we've tried over 50 different medications. We tried acupuncture, which was known to help, medical marijuana as well, but all of those things didn't seem to cooperate with my body. And we said, like, F it, like, let's just go for another surgery and see if it works this time. I went in and they saw that all the scar tissue which causes the seizures was on my right side, which affects my left side. So it was in a spot that controls my motor like function. So they weren't able to take it out, because if they took it out, I would not be able to like function on that side. So they put in a neural pace, which is basically a pacemaker that is on my brain, and the battery is on my skull.
Wow.
So yeah, it's crazy technology. But I'm grateful for that, and that has probably helped the most. So yeah, I still have the neural pace, and basically what it does is anytime that my brain feels a seizure coming on, it stops. It doesn't stop it, but it controls it to where my body doesn't feel it.
Okay.
So that's what's helped the most, and because of that, I've been able to get off a couple medications. But that's about it so far. And now I've been probably the best controlled than ever, pretty much. But it's definitely been a long road to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can't gloss over the fact that these are brain surgeries. What's the recovery like on something like that?
Um, I remember the 2012 one. It was just I just woke up with a huge headache and just hating life at that point.
Mhm.
Like like at that time, like I was 12 and I wouldn't support anything epilepsy related. I hated my doctors. I despised seeing the color purple. I wouldn't go to like any walks or fundraisers for it. I wanted nothing to do with it. Um, but yeah, the recovery for that, I don't remember how long it was, but it was not fun. Like I just stayed home all day, and that that
Yeah.
that was about it. But
So, how can people help?
all you can do to really help is just don't donate to any, like I like to partner with Epilepsy Florida because they're a great organization. They're who I started with when I lived in Miami because that's where they're based out of. Um, just donating like somebody is out there having a seizure right now. Like any dollar you give to any epilepsy organization is helping find cures, find services to make life easier for people living with epilepsy, and just even just like posting something like an epilepsy fact because it's very like not uncommon. It's just it's to a lot of people it's unheard of.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but that's why
And
I try to spread as much as I can with my organization as well, and try and collect any funds I can to have events where people can have a good time, learn something, and donate whatever you can.
it's amazing that, here I am talking to a woman who had 3 brain surgeries at the age of 12, followed by more afterwards. And yet she's a professional wrestler. She's, beating people up and getting beat up and stuff like that. You wouldn't think that those two things would be compatible, but I guess, your journey proves otherwise.
Yeah, to a certain extent, they're compatible. No, I mean, yeah, I there was a point where I got very, very upset and very depressed where I didn't want to acknowledge anything and I just didn't want to follow through with any passions that I had. But at a certain point, I was just like, it's not going anywhere. I can only control what I can. So I'm gonna keep doing what I want to do, and then what I can control, I'll control. What I can't, I'll just learn to live with. So I just stick by that every day and try to keep pushing forward.
Absolutely. Well, so bringing it back towards the wrestling stuff, I actually want to talk about Fangin and Banging for a second. So aside from the grind of wrestling, you also have a big role on Fangin and Banging with Gangrel. So talk about doing that podcast and what how that came about and how you kind of got involved.
Well,
Maybe you brought it
so
to him. I don't know.
no, I did not actually. So it was the producer's idea that went to Gangrel, and at the time he was working with a different co-host that for some reason didn't continue with it. And he was like, "Would you mind trying this out for me? It's a lot easier when I have somebody to bounce ideas off of." And I was like, "Ugh," like I was super nervous, super timid to do it because I'm not a talker. Like even by my in-ring work, I do not really speak a lot. I just like it's just expressions in my face.
Hmm.
So I was very nervous to do it. Like I probably wouldn't like podcasts is like something new that I'm doing like right here.
Hmm.
But he convinced me to do it, and ever since then I've just continue to do it with them, and I enjoy it because it's very cool to hear like the different topics that like he wants to talk about and my opinions on it and the producer Raymond's ideas as well. So every week it's something new.
Sure. And it's nice. I know you talk about things that you're doing and stuff, and he
Yeah.
always brings that stuff up. So it's very good give and take. So
Of course, yeah, yeah.
and people can see how often does Fang and Bang come out?
It comes out once a week on they don't we film them on Tuesday, but they come out either day of or a couple days after. But
Gotcha.
I always post it. I believe Gangrel always posts it as well. But yeah, it's FNB on any social media. So
Yeah, and
I
I
enjoy
know it's
it.
you get on YouTube, any of the your
Yeah,
podcast providers, any of those places definitely
yeah.
can check that out. Let's talk about Valentina Rossi for a moment now. So
Okay.
she is your opponent at this weekend's Breakout show. She's worked AEW Dark a whole bunch.
Hmm.
What does a victory over Valentina Rossi do for Anna Diaz's resume?
I feel like it would add a little something. I feel like it would add a little. I feel like it would add a little fire under me. Like, like this because I've never been on AEW Dark. She's more of a name than I am, but I feel like it will definitely be an interesting match because I've never worked her before. So I'm curious to see the contrasts of styles because I definitely don't have a similar style to many female wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it'll definitely push me and give me like a little fire to be like, yeah, I can do. I may not be like going where you're going or where you've been, but I can if I wanted to.
Yeah. What's your message for her?
My message. She's never met a woman quite like me. Nobody has. And you will end up in a sleeper hold like all of them do.
Nice.
In the nicest way possible. Yeah.
Okay, so for the purposes of orienting people who may not have had the privilege of encountering you before, can you point to a specific match that's on YouTube or anywhere that people should go check out?
I have a couple like a handful of good matches with on YouTube with Kylan Kang. And I've worked at TCW Thunder Championship Wrestling that is owned by Cahagas. And I have a good match with Sophia and a good match Sophia Castillo. And I have a pretty good match that I really like with Marina Tucker. So
Good.
those were definitely fun.
All right. And where can people connect with you on social media?
Social media, all my social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff is Miss Anna Diaz. MS Anna Diaz.
All right, well, perfect. So do come out to Breakout 12, May 21st, Pompano Beach, Florida. Tickets available at Coastal Championship Wrestling FL to see Miss Anna Diaz wrestle Valentina Rossi, and let's see if she gets that sleeper hold in.
I definitely will.
All right, thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Absolutely. Well, that's our show. Thanks so much to Anna Diaz, who was a great guest. Remember, she'll be facing Valentina Rossi this weekend at CCW Breakout 12. Tickets are available at CoastalChampionshipWrestlingFL.com. Drop us a comment on who else you would like to see on this show. Follow us on social media. I'm Minutes to Bell Time on Facebook and Instagram, and Minutes to Bell Time on Twitter. Be sure to watch a live wrestling every Tuesday on the CCW YouTube channel and follow Coastal Championship Wrestling on Facebook and Twitter. We'll see you next week. You have been watching CCW Insider, produced by Minutes to Bell Time in association with Coastal Championship Wrestling.